Michael Thomas.
Yes, sir.
All right. You know what's really cool? We don't know each other at all.
Just
like
met.
there's not even not even a film of familiarity in this.
Nope, just met you.
We knew each other. Like somebody sent a text, and it was like, "Hey, you need to talk to this dude." And like I was like, "Cool." And then like ever since that, it's just basically been logistics.
Yeah, that's it. Time, place, here we are.
Okay, man. So Michael, let me just kind of set people up, and we'll go through some conversation.
Sure.
Actually, you kind of set yourself up, man. I think you kind of know where we want to talk about.
Yeah.
Can you just kind of give like a 10,000 foot overview?
Yeah. So originally from Southern Illinois, I started using drugs and alcohol when I was 12 years old.
So the tagline is recovering.
Yeah, recovering,
Do you say recovering drug addict? Is that?
It depends on who
What's
I'm
the
talking
language?
to. Yeah, it depends on who I'm talking to.
Okay.
I try to be very mindful of the audience I'm talking to, right?
Okay.
It's weird, right? As people think about recovering, sometimes they only think about what they're suffering from, right? So I found I have to be very gentle sometimes in that approach, because otherwise you kind of lose some credibility. So oftentimes I just talk about my own experience, right? And what I found is people can relate to the pain, the circumstances, the loneliness, right? The depression more than the substance. And eventually, the goal is hopefully they come to the conclusion that the substance is kind of secondary to all the other problems. So,
And you said you actually spent time incarcerated.
yeah, multiple times. Like I said, Southern Illinois, small town, was born into a broken home. My parents divorced when I was 2. My mom, a lot of alcoholism and violence growing up. So at 12 years old, I found drugs and alcohol, or they found me, right? And with that came the older kids in the neighborhood. I'm no longer this scared, insecure kid from a broken home. I got a crew, and I'm accepted and felt like I was a part of, right?
Yeah.
And that just progressed and got darker and worse as time went.
Whew. Okay. I will say from the onset, as I've been through 2 fathers in my life, and both of them have passed away in very tragic ways, and both of them had dealt with their own addictions, one alcohol, one drugs, and so this is hitting like right home with me, and it hits home with so many people. I think that's one of the things that maybe the grand narrative is like addiction, whether it's like you said, whether it's with whatever it is, it hits home with a lot of people and it affects so many people.
Yeah, nowadays I think everybody's got somebody, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's somebody their parents or a cousin and uncle, right? That addiction's part of life now.
Yeah.
Like I said, I always try to think about that, right? Just because my hang up was different than yours doesn't mean that our suffering, right? I think that's what can bring people together and help us get past some of these hurdles that can prevent a person from having a good life.
Yeah.
Because there is life after recovery. After addiction, there's definitely life after addiction.
I guess, like, what do you think most people misunderstand about addiction?
I think, it gets
It's kind of a cookie cutter question, but
Yeah.
I do kind of like, what do you think most people misunderstand? What do you think most people misunderstand about your story in addiction?
Yeah, let me try to answer that in a way. So I was having a conversation this morning, actually, right? So I think sometimes if people hear, well, Michael has a history of drugs and alcohol, their mind automatically goes towards their personal experience, right? So now they're judging me based off Uncle Tony's drunkenness. He stole grandma's purse, blah, 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 right? So I think that's common.
Yeah.
I may be wrong,
No,
but
I
I
think
think
you're right on
that
that.
happens a lot. So I think that's one hang up. And then 2, if Uncle Tony's never changed, it's hard for them, it's hard for them to think, well, this guy's like my uncle or whatever their reference is, right?
Yeah.
So I think that can be a common misconception with drug and alcohol addiction.
That it's like whatever they felt is they're projecting it on you.
Yeah, their truth, right? Whatever their truth or point of reference or knowledge is, that can be projected onto the next person.
Do you ever have times where you just like you wake up and you remember things that happened in the past?
Yeah.
I know you said it's 15 years, but like
Yeah.
there's some stupid crap I did in college that like I wake up and I'm like, by the grace of God,
Sure.
this went that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yes, to your question, a lot of time early sobriety, that ate me up, right? The guilt, the shame, the remorse, the coulda, woulda, shoulda. You know, I got sober when I was 28 years old. So, you know,
So from 12 to 28,
12 from 28, rehab, mental institutions, prison 5 times, homelessness, suicide attempts. You know, all the things.
you were in prison 5 times.
5 times, yeah. I gave I gave Illinois Department of Corrections almost 9 years of my life.
Wow.
But, you know, prison helped save my life, right? Had I not
Talk to me about that, because I don't have a high view of prison.
Yeah, had I not got, you know, it seemed like every time I was down a dark path where, you know, death was looming, I would get arrested. It was crazy. And at the time, I'm like, man, I just don't have very good luck. I'm not a very good criminal, right? These are the thoughts. Into my sobriety, I finally began to recognize that, you know, God's grace was present. Even when I wasn't interested in God, you know, he was definitely there to protect me. So I'd go to prison or rehab, and, you know, it gives you an opportunity to sleep, eat, rest, right? Get cleaned up a little bit.
Does it? So I did prison ministry for a while. And dude, when they shut those doors, like it was not a settling feeling for me.
It's scary. It's heavy. It's all the things you can envision. It's a little different than TV. You know,
Not Oz.
TV can make you believe that it's you know, there's fights, and there are fights, right? But for the most part, prison isn't what you see on TV.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't. I want to trust you at your word and never have to figure that out. So.
Sure. Yeah, so, you know, just in and out, up and down. I would get out of places with great intentions and motives, right? I would
In prison, or are you talking about out in the?
I'll get out of prison, get out of rehab, wherever I was at, with great intentions and motives, and kind of this determination that I was going to do better and be different. And the time in between began to get shorter and shorter. You know, 6 months. I might be out 6 months and land a job and, you know, get a girlfriend, whatever life looked like for me at that time. But I would slowly but surely drift back to the drugs and alcohol, you know, and the time in between my freedom and incarceration began to get shorter and shorter. So the last time I was out, I was only out 2 months, went on a binge, blacking out drunk, sleeping outside. I caught a new charge and a violation of my parole, and I was back in prison in 2 months. And that was the turning point for me where, you know, I was just alone with myself, alone with my thoughts. I think just the accumulation of all of that pain and suffering, it dawned on me that this is my future. This is where I'm going to be. I have no way out of this situation. I keep trying, but I keep ending up in the place I don't really want to be.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm a bad guy. I've done some terrible things. And for the first time in my whole adult life, I said a prayer. I said, God, if you're
While
real,
you're in prison, or
while I'm in prison, I'm laying there on the bunk, just so depressed, so just humiliated more than anything, right? I can't figure this thing out. And I said, God, if you're real, show me you're real. And next thing I knew, I was in Hillsborough, actually, in prison. I got moved to a new housing unit, and things just kind of began to transpire, you know. I didn't have a bright light experience or anything like that, but just them moving me, I moved to a drug and alcohol unit. Because I had been incarcerated so many times, I didn't qualify for any good time or time off my sentence. So traditionally, there's a waiting list to get into that housing unit. So I believe God arranged that, and I moved there, and I started going to church, and for the wrong reasons at first, you know, just to get out of my cell, something to do. And I began to hear and see and experience things that I had never heard, seen, or experienced. You know, these guys that were incarcerated, sometimes most of the time for charges worse than me, facing more time than I was, doing more time than I was, they were happy. They had some joy. They had a different aura about them. And
that's interesting, because there's something called jailhouse religion.
Sure, yeah.
And it's like you go in there and everybody says the right things, but you could just, it's a veneer for what is really going on.
There's kind of two categories, right? Jailhouse religion, jailhouse lawyers too.
Oh, tell me about jailhouse lawyers.
Yeah, you know, these guys that they can't get themselves out of their own case, but yet they're trying to educate you and tell you your loopholes and what laws, and it's like, You know, it's comical, really, if you think about it.
They're
you
just
know.
talkers. They're natural talkers.
Just talkers. They've read a little bit of the law book, and now they can
I
represent
would have
you.
never even thought about
Yeah.
jailhouse
So that to that
lawyers.
point, that is a very common thing in prison. Everybody's running some type of game.
Yeah.
Right. Whether they're trying to buddy up to you to see how much commissary you have, or they're trying to get access to your loved ones, your sister, your girlfriend. That's a very much real thing about prison.
People are trying to like they're trying to like connect with your they're trying to like hook up with your
Everything's a hustle.
relationships.
Yeah, everything's a hustle. They'll get your address of your loved ones and write them and say, Tony's in trouble. I need you to send me X amount of money. That's a very
Really?
common thing. Yes. Yeah.
I would have never like.
Yeah.
I'm so gullible. I wouldn't have even thought about
Or,
that.
you know, in county jail and prison, you'll have a PIN number where you can put money on your books.
Yeah.
They're trying to buddy up to you so they can get into your property and get that PIN number
Yeah.
to then, you know, use your funds. All of those things very much are happening today.
So like, you have a white collar job, I presume. I don't
yeah.
know. I see you kind of dressed like this.
I
And,
do.
Does that street ever come out in you? Like in meetings, are you ever like, dude? I'll tell you what. This is how you know, like that. That just come out. You're like, uh-oh.
Sometimes I have, you know, intrusive thoughts, right? But it's more so.
Well, even just your demeanor. You know, it's
Yeah.
like.
It's
No, we're not playing like that.
It has and it does, not to that extreme, but more so it's the realization that man, if they knew who I really was,
Yeah.
you know, for instance, I was at a client, a bank 6 months ago, probably, let's say, and you know, I'm looking around and like the vault's there, and I'm meeting with the bank president. And it was just kind of one of those moments where I'm like, they have no idea who I am, you know,
Wow.
or who I was, I guess is a better way to put it.
Have you found that people, once they do know who you are, only see you through that lens?
Yeah, that's pretty common. Most people, you know, it took me a while. I was, you know, 8-9 years sober probably before I was in a position where I felt good about my sobriety, about the life I was living, and became more open and transparent with my journey. Before that, you know, I kind of didn't know is this going to work, right? Am I able to change? So as my
Because you didn't trust yourself?
didn't trust myself. I had failed so many times.
Were you with your wife at that time?
Not early on. So I had about a year sober before we started dating, but
The year's not that long.
not that long at all. No. So before I really started being louder, I guess is the point on the internet, or you know, talking with individuals about my past. I was every bit of somewhere between 7 and 9 years sober, and so. Most
Yeah, that
people
feels
that
about
that,
good
that
time.
know me, you know, that they say things like, you know, I would never have guessed, or it's hard for me to believe, you know, that that you were that person. So
How does that make you feel?
it used to make me feel a little uncomfortable. Now I appreciate it. You know, I give the praise and glory to God. I didn't change myself. You know,
Yeah.
I put in some work. Right.
Yeah.
I've learned how to have some consistency and some discipline in different areas, but I don't have the power to change myself.
Do you feel like, has anybody looked at you and said, you know, like religion or Christ, you know, it's a crutch. It's a.
I haven't experienced that personally.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I have not. You know, maybe behind
That's good.
maybe behind my back. I don't know, but you know,
You don't need to concern yourself
I've
with
tried
people
to
say behind your
make
back.
spirituality, whatever you want to call it. You know, to me, it's a relationship with your higher power, right? Whatever that looks like for you. I've tried to make that as achievable for anyone that I can.
Yeah.
Because I was not likely to change, right? I was not someone that people thought, you know what, that guy's got a bright future ahead of him. And, you know, through this path, life's okay today.
Do you manage people?
I do, yeah.
Do you find that you have like a softer side for like misfits, or do you find that you have a harder, like a little bit harsher stance? You're laughing, so I have no idea where you're going with that.
It can depend, right?
Okay.
I have a lot of empathy and understanding.
Okay.
I've been there. On the other side, I have a short tolerance for excuses, for, you know, I overslept, or just anything that's in your control.
Yeah.
You know, really irks me. Yeah, I was So funny story, I was 6 months out of prison, working at the Salvation Army, and got promoted to production supervisor. I have no driver's license. I really don't know what I'm doing. Now I'm in charge of somewhere between 40 and 60 people and 5 stores. So I was in way over my head.
Yeah.
Thank God for mentorship and, my relationship with God. And I was in a Christian discipleship program at that time that really helped. But so I often joke, but anything I've learned or think I know about leadership or managing or leading people, I learned on the job, like through failure, right? And a lot of it just came down to trying to treat this person the way I would want to be treated, right? Trying to give them everything they need to succeed. Yeah.
There's this great John. Do you know who John Ortberg is?
I'm not familiar.
He said, I think he had a falling out in the church. I mean, he was with Bill Hybels and kind of he was up on that teaching team during that time and went out to California. And I think there was some kind of something, I don't know exactly what, but he's resurfacing and he had this comment where he said, I don't go to the Sunday morning service. I go to the basement because that's where the AA's meetings are. Yeah. And he said that's where the miracles are happening. Yeah. And so when you said higher power, I was thinking, man, did you go through AA and through NA? Is it NA? Did you go through
I went
NA?
through a 12-step group, and I'm still active in that group today. Yeah. Big part of my recovery for sure.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's interesting because it's higher power. What does that do? You find people who don't go to Jesus, don't go to God, like what you would say the Judeo-Christian God, do they find other avenues? Do they find other sources?
I know a guy today that has somewhere between 30 and 40 years sober, and he's a self-proclaimed atheist.
Really?
His loophole, whatever you want to call it, right? His belief is in the group itself, and it's obviously worked for him. So to your point, and I have another friend that has, he's 93, turning 93 next month. He's got 48 years of sobriety, let's say. He says there's no wrong way to stay sober.
Ooh, I like that. Mm-hmm. There's no wrong way to stay. Talk to me a little bit about your. I thank you for just sharing your story. I know that, I don't know, as I actually waffled back and forth on it, not because I'm afraid of having a conversation, but I'm afraid of making someone feel a certain way. It would be like somebody, it just is like pointing out this one thing about them, and that's not the totality of who you are. You are married, you have kids, you have hobbies, you have all these things. So this was one aspect, but so many people can't identify with that.
To your point earlier, I think that can be, I know it was for me. I'll just speak to my own experience. Early on in sobriety, right, as I'm trying to attempt recovery, I have no idea what I'm doing. All I know is what's familiar, right? And even though I hate the person I am, I don't want to keep doing those things. Yeah. It's familiar, it's comfortable, and I know it sucks, but it's all I know. Yeah. So who am I going to be if I'm not that person? So that requires some type of faith in the beginning to just at least open up your mind to the fact that it can be different. It might not get any better, but at least it can be different than what you're experiencing, because clearly that isn't working. And that's really the nuts and bolts of 12-step programs, right? Yeah. To get honest about your situation, become open-minded to possibilities, and then get willing to start to do something different. Yeah. And then you'll get some different results. And along that way, there's a whole process that, it's worked for millions of people really around the world. So
it's the honesty with self. Whether you're a drug addict or a CEO, it's honesty with self as to a realistic evaluation of who you are and what weights you're creating.
It's so hard, right? Because that requires you to be vulnerable. Yeah. Right. I might get hurt. Yeah. I was not good at it in the beginning. I joke with guys I mentor and work with now, but my mentor at the time, I was 3, 4, 5, 6 months sober, let's say, and I was boo-hooing about something, that was going wrong in my world, and he first said, did you ever just have a little bit of gratitude that you're alive? Mm-hmm. I'm like, no. And then he went on to say, did you ever think about you calling me could help me more than it helps you? And it was just like, No, because I've only thought about myself for so long,
Yeah.
right? Survival, right? That a lot, my experience has been most of my life prior to sobriety was ran on self-centered fear. I was afraid of getting exposed, afraid of getting hurt. You know, it was just survival. I was in this survival state for so long, and I suffered greatly because of it, and my family suffered greatly because of it. You know, on the flip side now, you know, I'm not Mother Teresa by any means, but I try to give back and be available, and you know, because otherwise, my default setting is self.
It's for everybody.
I don't want
It's for
self.
everybody.
Self does not serve me well, right?
I wish self served me better.
I know. I wish it was that easy.
I wish it helped me in some capacity, but it always leads me
It
to
always
very
leads
wrong,
me somewhere I don't
very
wanna
wrong
be.
decisions.
Yes.
Ah.
So I just
Okay.
had to learn that the hard way. Like when I'm wrapped up in me, nothing good's gonna come of it.
How has your so the last thing I do want to ask about this is, like, I've lived with a alcoholic, I've seen drug addicts in my life, and how is that process of like learning to forgive yourself but then also asking forgiveness of others?
Yeah, it's a long journey. You know, it's a whole path of reconstruction that
Did anybody refuse your forgiveness?
Oh yeah. There's a couple family members that, you know, we still don't talk. I pray for them, you know, but we still don't talk. And you know, I just really underestimated.
What would they say? What would they say, like, without getting in specifics?
Yeah,
We're not doing that.
I think for my particular situation, I'm 2 hours away from my hometown. You know, one family member in particular. Well, we don't get to see you every day, so we don't know how you live. You could be up there doing whatever you want, and I'm like, well, okay, you know, I'll let you have that, right? That's your prerogative, whatever. But I underestimated that journey of reconstruction and making those amends and trying to. You can't prove to anyone that you're a different person, right? I couldn't prove to anyone. I failed multiple times. So for me, thankfully, having good people in my life, mentors that were really holding my hand through this process, taught me that, right? I don't have to say anything. My life will eventually start to speak for itself. And that's been my experience. Now, I've made I've had some really tough conversations and had to sit family members down and go into depth about the things I had done, because I want to make, you know, part of my journey was I want to make restitution. If there's a way I can make this whole, I want to do that. Yeah. And a lot of them were, you know, just keep doing what you're doing, right? But there were some that, you know, required something of me.
I can imagine that. I mean, on a much smaller scale, I'm kind of the black sheep of the family, and I sometimes think they only see me in my dark days in college. And it's like, I see that. Like, yeah. I can only imagine if it was a more pronounced period of my life where it's like, I'm 43 now. Yeah. Like, I've got a doctorate, I've got kids, I've got my wife. You know, I'm like, that wasn't me. Yeah. Like,
that was a moment in time where I made some really bad decisions.
Yeah.
Mine was drawn out, obviously. And the other thing I underestimated was, you know, I was 4 or 5 years sober. So I have my wife, Rachel, and I have a 7-year-old daughter. And then I have an 18-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter from a previous relationship. I was 4 or 5 years sober. I knew that, you know, I knew that my addiction and my time away from my kids affected them. I always justified it. Well, I never used in front of them. And I didn't realize being absent until I was 4 or 5 years sober. Then it dawned on me, like, oh my gosh.
Dude, you just nailed a very human thing, because that father figure role, I mean, as someone who has massive father wounds, I think you just hit it's like, well, I didn't do it in front of them, but the absence of you, and then the person you were before, because they experienced that, right?
They experienced it, yeah.
Wow. Do you feel guilt, almost like, I don't want to say guilt, because I don't want to throw that out in the universe, but like, is there's this tension that you feel like with your 7-year-old versus
I've had to be very open and honest with my mentor, right, and people that I know care about my soul and my well-being, because I've caught myself at times trying to make up with my youngest daughter, right, for not being present. And finally, I just had to. I had to be mindful of that. And once I started becoming aware of it, I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. I can't make up for it, but I can be the best version of myself today for them. And it's funny. The older they've gotten, the more I've been able to show up in ways that I didn't expect that I would be able to show up for, and I know they've appreciated it. And our relationship today is good.
Man, that's. I'm really glad you said something on that, because that is a true reality to the road to it.
Dads are so important.
Yeah.
Like I said, my parents divorced when I was 2, so the only example I had was a stepfather that he drank and beat on my mom.
Yeah,
right. He was absolutely in and out. And now behind that, I had a grandfather that was your typical.
Dude, I had a grandfather too.
Yeah,
that
so
still my dad. It's like my dad.
So
like,
he was a typical blue collar guy. Packed his lunch every day. Went to work. Took care of my grandma.
Yeah.
And he did that up till the day he passed a couple years ago. So now I know how important a father is. And I get
it changes families. That's,
oh my gosh.
Family legacies are changed, not only through men, but through fathers in specifically, but a lot through fathers.
Yeah. But to that point, like our grandfather was for us, right? We can be that for the neighbor kids.
Oh yeah.
Right. We can. There's a great program, The Outlet. I volunteered.
Oh, I just was there.
Oh yeah. So
I was just there. One of the founders. He just recently joined,
oh,
and
nice.
I just believe the Lord has sent him to our church
great
for such a time
ministry.
as this. Oh yeah,
great ministry.
Oh yeah,
love Mike and
it's Mike May.
Yeah.
He's been coming here.
Mike Phelan's the other founder.
Yeah,
and those brothers are living their calling. Right, they're on a path to help young men, and it's very encouraging.
Last question on this, and I do want to get to the faith side, is what do you hope someone gets from your story? I know you probably answer that a lot.
I hope that they can see that, it's possible, right? I was in a place in my life where I had no hope. There was no ambition in me. I was, in fact, desperate. And I don't think everybody has to get to that place, but now on this side of it, had I not went through everything I went through, I wouldn't appreciate, I wouldn't value, I wouldn't respect addiction or recovery as much as I do. So I hope that, if somebody's listening or has a loved one.
That's an interesting thought, that you have to respect addiction and the recovery. You have to respect both of those processes.
Yeah, I'm very.
That's really interesting.
I'm very top of mind, a few bad decisions.
Life's changed.
Life changes, right? A few bad decisions. If I quit praying today, watch out.
How's your view of God changed throughout this?
Oh gosh, before that prayer in prison, my 5th time incarcerated, God was somebody way out there that good people had access to, and a guy like me, there was no access. Genie at best, right? And today he's with me, he's in me, he's everything to me.
But how has it evolved and how's it deepened in this? That's a long journey, and that's a lot to learn and unlearn.
Okay, yeah. So, in the beginning, it was that desperate prayer, right? Yeah. God, if you're real, show me you're real. As I began to study, pray, ask questions to people that I respected, my mind opened up, I guess, right? And allowed my heart to receive more. And what I found from my experience, I guess probably anybody's experience that's seeking or searching, God's not hard to find. I started, it was crazy. Like, I started seeing God and goodness in everything. And I can remember early on, working at the Salvation Army, like, I was not making very good money. But boy, I was so grateful for the opportunity to be able to pay my bills and do something good. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, I would wonder that, it's like, okay, you find this one version of your faith, right? And I can only speak for myself. I have gone through several iterations of wrestling through the scriptures, and sometimes it actually feels dangerous in some ways, because you learn and unlearn, and you say, oh, well, I'm carrying this thought because of this, and I look at some thoughts and like a prime example, just I'd never even heard of this, but somebody said, we make Adam, in this Augustinian view, and nobody wants to hear that, but we make Adam stronger than Christ. We make his death more powerful than Christ's life that he offers to all. Somehow death is more powerful than life. So but my point is that security that came right after you were recovered, in that process, I would feel like it's somewhat very vulnerable to step away and allow your imagination to be shifted about God or about church or about XYZ.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was thinking about that in your story, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. So, an example, right? I was probably in prison a year and a half at this point. I had said that prayer, and I'm going to church, and I got baptized in prison. And
wait, you got baptized in prison?
Yeah. So, as a new believer, I'm on fire.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in the day room, and like a good new Christian, I'm judging all the other inmates.
Yeah. That's what new Christians do.
And thank God that, it dawned on me, like, wait a minute, you're in the same jumpsuit, the same
I got
place,
the number right on my chest,
the
too.
same place as these jokers. And, not that I do it perfectly by any means, but ever since then, I almost have to run my thoughts, my judgments through this filter of love. And what I learned from that situation was all through Scripture, God never used captivity to punish his children. He always used captivity to restore and rescue his children. And, so I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't judge people anymore, But that was an example of, still a lot of self and not really knowing how to die to self, how to really lean into, my life was just ran on so much of me. If it feels good, it must be good. If this thought feels right, it must be right.
Yeah.
And never really pausing and having that reflection time of, is this true?
Where does doubt come in, like with God? I think, again, going to the illustration of you're holding on to this certainty. I feel like doubt and skepticism, I feel like if we don't doubt, or if we have not had periods of doubt or skepticism, I think there's a lack of depth there, because you're talking about the unseen. I mean, you're talking about it all. And
Yeah,
it's
you've
like,
not touched it.
Yeah. And so, just how does that play into this? Because it's like, I got this, I pray every morning, and that's how, there are some mornings I wake up and I'm like,
I'm not doing it.
No, I'm not praying, and I'm just going through the day, and I'll be honest, there's days I just significantly doubt and significantly am just wrestling with things. And but I'm also an artist too, so I'm moody in all the places.
It's a great question, and I'm thankful for good godly examples. And what I mean by that is, so when I got to Springfield via Department of Corrections, I'm on parole. I did not want to do this, what I'm about to explain to you. So part of the discipleship program was we had to volunteer.
Yeah.
Hated it.
Yeah.
Grumbled about it.
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea what it was doing to my character. So the point of that is, for me, I have to stay in the middle. Right? I have to stay around service. I have to be around people that maybe they're having a bad day and I can be strong for them today, or vice versa. Right? And the other thing that's an advantage, I guess, for people in recovery, and I share this often with guys that I mentor, some days I don't feel close to God.
Sure.
But I have friends in recovery, right? And vice versa. Some days I feel really close to God. So that fellowship partnered with that relationship has been a great antidote for me. And just staying in the middle of that service, I was fortunate. This morning I was up. A friend, they have a baby in the hospital, and
I think I saw that. Was it on 217?
Yeah. And it's very tragic. But his faith, knowing who he was a few years ago, of course I'm there to pray for the baby, and I'm believing God to do a miracle. But he encouraged me by knowing that he's standing strong through this. And I'm like, dude, I probably would have fell apart. Your kid's on a ventilator.
You're tearing up right now.
Dude, your kid's on a ventilator, and here you are thanking the doctors, thanking the nurses for they're doing their job. But so, it was just one of those moments where if I'm not in the middle of something like that, my doubt's going to eat me up, right? I'm not going to have those experiences or those moments to where nothing else matters. In that moment, nothing else mattered. So I get a lot of that. I do a lot of that. I'm fortunate to be connected with a bunch of different organizations that I need that. I need that because those moments of doubt and the other thing I was going to say on that is, God has shown up so much in my life to where when doubt, fear, anxiety comes, I can look backwards and see where, if he brought me through that, my stub toe's not going to ruin my day. So sometimes it's just that decision, right? That mind shift of I do feel bad today, yucky, whatever it is, but I'm still going to put my shoes on, get dressed, and show up. Show up, and most of the time, well, in fact, every time I've pushed through that, something good's came out of it.
Man, I wish we had a whole lot more time because this idea of pushing through a faith experience, man, that's like that does not resonate with me. I don't feel like we push through it as much as something is pulled from us.
That's good.
There was a long season. I think 2 years ago, I preached through the Old Testament with this program and really struggled with the idea of God sending a plague to kill babies. And especially with some of the conversations that people are so loud about, and you look through the scriptures and there's a lot of instances that I feel like people just gloss over and just like had some serious questions about with God, right? Like I mean, I'm not walking away from my faith, but I'm certainly trying to reconcile a bunch. And so it's almost like it's like every time I try to push through things in my faith, it doesn't go well either, because then I'm leaning into something. Anytime I try to close fist something with my faith, it doesn't work. It's like I've always got to lean it. I've got to have this open hand with it.
I love that pool. Makes me think about Jacob wrestling with God, right?
Sure.
And I think that's okay. That point you're making, that experience you've had, the experience that I've had, God wants us to ask these questions, to have these feelings, to come to Him, to seek. There's so much power in seeking.
There's so much power in the wrestling.
Yeah.
I mean, He's named Jacob to Israel, and it's in the encounter of the wrestling, and you don't walk away the same.
Yeah.
So, hey, before we get out of here, because I got another thing I was going to do after all this, talk to me about that baptism in prison. What did that look like?
Yeah, they they had a day a month that it was just a thing. You could sign up. I had no idea what baptism was really about, but what drew me was, again, these other inmates that, man, there was something different about them.
Where did y'all do it? Like in a horse tub?
Oh, they had a chapel and chaplain in there. And, there's traditional church in most prisons, I assume.
I just did it. We did a ministry in the cafeteria.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so they had a horse trough or a pool or something. And, ironically, I didn't plan this, but my middle child, Jolie, her birthday, I was baptized on her birthday.
Dude.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story, man. I appreciate
thanks for
that.
having me, man.
This has been refreshing. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Awesome.